Hi folks, so this is video 1 of 2 this week on algebra tiles. So we're going to start out, we're going to look at area and perimeter with algebra tiles, and then we'll move on to talk more about the equations, combining like terms, equation mats, some of the harder stuff. So this video is more for those of you who don't get the concept at all so far. You will be seeing perimeter on the quiz on Monday. So you definitely want to at least understand the perimeter part of this. So the most basic algebra tile we have is the unit algebra tile. It's the small one. This defines the 1. And the basic idea is that it's 1 on each side. So this length right here is a 1 by 1. And we found the area of a square. 1 times 1 is 1. And then we move up to our x. So if you notice, the x has a length of 1 on one side, and then some other length right here. And it's non-commensurate with other tiles, so that means you can't add a bunch of these 1 tiles together and create the x, because it's a variable. So this is going to be a 1 by x, which leads us to the actual x squared tile, which is x by x in length. So this becomes the x squared. Then we have another variable. Again, we have a 1 length, and then some other number. And this other number could take any shape it wants to. So even though this is a rigid piece of plastic that doesn't really move around, it could morph out to be super big, it could shrink out to be teeny tiny. But because it's a rigid piece of plastic, it's going to always be the same size. It just doesn't line up perfectly with these guys. So you can't say put 5 1s on the y and say that it's 5, because it isn't. It's something else. And we have, of course, the y squared tiles. So y by y. That gives us all the areas except for one, which is our xy tile, which is a y on one side and x on the other. So area problems are pretty simple and straightforward with algebra tiles. You just look at the pieces that you have in front of you and you name them. So this would be y squared plus xy plus x squared. Change it around a little bit. Here's the shape is x squared plus x. This shape would be y squared plus y. And so on and so forth. Perimeter, though, gets a little trickier. So if I were to sketch the perimeter of this shape here, just draw around. It's a lot easier if you use a few tiles to do this, because if you use a bunch of tiles, you'll end up having things moving around everywhere, as I'm sure you've watched me do in class a bunch. But this one was pretty straightforward. So now I have a y, a y, a y, a 1, a 1, and another y. So if I were to add up the perimeter of this figure, I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 y's plus 1, 2 constants. So this is a 4y plus 2 perimeter off those 2 tiles there. Probably the hardest thing I can do with perimeter is if I stuck a unit tile somewhere in the middle of one of the lengths. So here I've got an x squared tile, and on this side there's this little unit tile sticking out. So we know this length is x, this length is x, x. And we know these lengths are 1, 1, 1, but then we have to figure out what this is. Now remember, even though this is a rigid piece of plastic that doesn't move around, it could be any size, right? It could be big, it could be small, we don't really know what x is, but I do know that this unit tile right here is always 1. So this length right here is an x minus 1. And the trickiest thing I could do is like add another one here. I maybe have an x minus 2 or an x minus 3. Gets a little confusing if I put too many of these together. So usually I only say like an x minus 1 for a length. And then if I'm finding the perimeter here, I still count up 1, 2, 3, 4 x's, and that's part of an x minus 1. So I got 4 x's, and then 1, 2, 3 positive ones, and a negative 1. And the hardest part about this, 3 minus 1 is 2. So that perimeter was 4x plus 2. So I hope that makes a little more sense about perimeter and area for algebra tiles. Stay tuned for our next video where we start doing some more combining like terms, a little bit of the equation maths, and we start talking about the negatives and the positives on the algebra tiles. Have a good day.